Willow Creek was the kind of town where nothing bad ever happened, or at least, that's what people liked to believe. The streets were clean, kids rode their bikes without fear, and neighbors knew each other by name. At the very center of that picture-perfect illusion stood Richard Hale ***, a man woven into the very fabric of the town. He was the golden standard of decency. A devoted husband, a doting father, a deacon at the First Baptist Church, and most importantly, the chairman of Willow Creek's charity board. If tragedy struck, Richard was the first at the scene with comforting words and a checkbook. He organized food drives, rebuilt houses after fires, and was even responsible for founding the town's scholarship fund. To Willow Creek, Richard Hale wasn't just a man, he was the embodiment of trust itself. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Detective Claire Morgan had been in Willow Creek for less than 6 months. Transferred from the city after a messy case, she thought this quiet town would be a reprieve from the corruption and chaos she'd left behind. But corruption had a way of wearing disguises. Claire noticed it first in the charity ledger's numbers that didn't quite add up, donation envelopes that seemed to vanish into thin air, municipal budgets drained by unexplained emergency allocations. The town chalked it up to clerical errors, but Claire's instincts told her otherwise. She dug deeper, quietly. And the deeper she went, the darker it became. One rainy night, Claire traced a series of unusual transactions to a property no one seemed to know existed, a small cabin hidden deep in the woods outside Willow Creek. It wasn't listed under Richard Hale's name. In fact, it wasn't listed under anyone's. The documents led to a maze of shell companies, fake identities, and offshore accounts. When she finally forced her way inside the cabin, what she discovered stripped the illusion of Willow Creek bare. Stacks of cash bundled neatly with rubber bands. Forged passports and IDs in names that didn't exist. Bank statements showing millions moving in and out of accounts across the globe. And worst of all, blackmail files meticulously documented secrets on nearly every person in town. There were photographs of affairs, recordings of private conversations, medical records revealing addictions and mental health issues. He had their weaknesses catalogued like a hunter mounting trophies. Richard Hale hadn't earned Willow Creek's loyalty, he had engineered it. Claire realized why no one else had noticed the truth. They couldn't afford to. Richard had them in his grip. The mayor who'd been skimming money from municipal funds, the sheriff with an old drunk driving incident covered up, the school principal hiding an affair with a teacher. Everyone had a secret, and Richard knew them all. What terrified Claire most wasn't the money, it wasn't even blackmail. It was the quiet precision with which Richard had constructed his empire. Every donation he collected, every favor he granted, every sermon he preached, it was all part of the scaffolding of control. Down in the cabin's basement, Claire's flashlight caught something strange, a heavy freezer padlocked shut. After forcing it open, the stench of death filled the air. Inside were evidence bags and bones. Forensics later confirmed they belonged to Mark Tully, a man who had vanished 15 years earlier. Everyone in Willow Creek believed he'd fled town after a gambling scandal. But the truth was darker. Mark had stumbled onto Richard's embezzlement back then. He tried to expose him. Richard silenced him permanently. And now Mark's body was the silent witness Richard thought would never be found. Letter 199, the man behind the mask. Claire confronted Richard at his home. She expected denial, resistance, maybe even violence. Instead, he opened the door calmly, invited her in, and poured her a glass of wine. When she laid out what she knew, Richard smiled, not a smile of guilt, but of amusement. "Detective," he said softly, "do you really think this town wants me gone? They may hate me now, but they'll hate each other more when I'm not here to keep their secrets. I didn't just control Willow Creek. I held it together. Without me, it will devour itself." The case rocked Willow Creek like an earthquake. The townsfolk couldn't believe their saintly benefactor was a thief, a manipulator, and a murderer. But the shock only deepened when half the town defended him. They claimed the evidence was fabricated. They swore the detective had planted it. They said Richard was being framed because he was too good. The other half turned on him with venom, furious at the betrayal. The trial became less about Richard's guilt and more about the soul of Willow Creek. Skeletons tumbled out of closets everywhere as Richard's files leaked into the public record. Marriages collapsed, businesses folded, friendships turned into vendettas. And through it all, Richard sat in the courtroom, calm and unflinching, as though he was still in control. During the trial, prosecutors uncovered something Claire hadn't expected. Richard hadn't acted alone. Some of the documents pointed to an unidentified partner, someone who helped launder money and possibly assisted in Mark Tully's murder. But who? The trail went cold. No fingerprints, no names, just a shadow in the background of Richard's empire. Even after Richard was sentenced to life in prison without parole, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that his accomplice was still out there, still watching. With Richard behind bars, Willow Creek didn't find peace. Instead, chaos erupted. The secrets he had kept locked away spilled into the open. Affairs were revealed, crimes were confessed, corruption was exposed. The town he had controlled with an iron grip was now eating itself alive. And Claire began to wonder if Richard had been right. Late one night, she received an envelope slipped under her office door. Inside was a single photograph of her breaking into the cabin the night she found the evidence. Written on the back in neat handwriting were the words, "We are still here." Richard Hale wasn't just the man everyone trusted. He was the architect of a machine built on secrets and fear. And even behind bars, the machine still turned. Because Richard Hale wasn't working alone. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Vault of Crimes for more dark and suspenseful crime stories.